How many people are from California or came from elsewhere? Name a couple of elsewheres. I want to know where people are from. Arizona, Wyoming. I know you're Tennessee. Wisconsin. Ooh, I love it. South Carolina in the house. Love it. This is great. Oh, woo! Uluru. Let's talk about Uluru, you guys. Oh my God. Listen, I could go on for a while. By the way, I think is this, are we still going here? Can you hear me? Okay. My author's booth is down yonder where all of our speaker booths are. Come talk to me. Everyone come, and I want to know more about you. This is what this presentation is about. It's about you and perhaps your family. So without further ado, I'm going to get right into it because we are on the clock, and I'm going to say, for the record, I always do this. One of these days I'll be able to just wing it, but I do have notes here because this is so chock full of information. So I want to make sure we get everything in. So I'm going to get right into it. My fascination with not just the subject of UFOs and the ET presence, but my growing fascination with the idea that contact encounters may be far more commonplace than we know is a drum I've been beating for a while now. I actually gave my first lecture in Uluru, Australia, on the idea of contact being perhaps a phenomenon that happens to millions, even billions, maybe all of us, but we don't realize it. I called it unconscious contact. Are you an experiencer and don't know it? But as I got further into this idea and the research and the stories, the anecdotes that I've gathered over time, my hypothesis that contact is happening maybe to the majority of our planet didn't stop there. I started to question the idea of contact encounters, including abductions. And by the way, I've said this before, where all abductions are a form of contact, not all contact are abductions. But that being said, I began to look at the idea of contact with non-human intelligence running in families. And on we go here, running in families. Let's call this familial or intergenerational contact. Like the contact phenomenon at large, encounters within families may also be way more common than we can begin to fathom. And I think I'm going to hopefully not prove it, but lend credence to that as we go further. But here's the other thing that got me to thinking. If this is so, and I'm going to cut right to the chase, when I started thinking about the number of families, most of us, frankly, and I was kind of reflecting on the dysfunction that's so common within so many families for so long, for a lot of reasons, you have to ask why. Why is it so common? Why is the human species, it seems, predisposed to dysfunction? That's a big thing to me. Now, clearly, we could look at the more, let's say, conventional reasons for family dysfunction, like unresolved trauma or grief, financial stress, addiction, substance abuse. There's many. But what if beneath all of these more familiar challenges is another source, one that's so strange, so unspoken that it rarely even enters the conversation? What if the hidden variable contributing to family dysfunction is a suppression of a contact event? What if? Or worse, an entire lineage of contact no one ever dared talk about? That's where I'm going to be driving with this talk today. There's a ton of evidence to support this idea that contact among families and even throughout multiple generations is a reality and is common. So we're going to dig into some of those today. But before we do, I want to give you the impetus for where, or I should say, who got me to thinking about this whole idea of intergenerational contact. Has anyone here seen the film Witness of Another World? Fabulous. It's fabulous. This is back in 2019, incidentally, the same year I gave my Uluru presentation, that I had the pleasure of meeting a filmmaker named Alan Stivelman, you see him right here, who had just released a groundbreaking documentary on the life of a man named Juan Perez, who you see right here, and here is a child. Now, Juan, who's known as a gaucho, a cowboy from Argentina, grew up in a remote farm there. He had an encounter with a strange craft that changed his life as a young child. He passed out, he remembered beings, but it wasn't just the event. It's what happened afterward that literally brought PTSD to him. And here you can see him as a young boy in tears while being grilled by the Argentinian press about his experience. It was in the news and the torment that carried into adulthood. He withdrew, he isolated, and for decades he lived with the trauma of that experience and the silence around it. Really profound. But it wasn't until Alan brought him back to the memory years later with help from ufologist and astronomer Jacques Vallée, who you see here, that the truth finally came to light. Juan learned something that changed everything. His mother also had contact. That one revelation changed and reframed his entire life, and even though there were many, hard steps to get to that point, he did get there, much of which had to do with Alan, the filmmaker, wanting to make this documentary, but also help this young man and also, help others that he might expose to Juan's story. We're gonna get into that a bit more later. But what felt like a burden that he carried alone eventually became a thread in something much bigger, something ancestral and something shared. That was the moment I knew this phenomenon doesn't just affect individuals, it goes through bloodlines. So Juan Perez opened the door to my interest in the idea of familial contact. But as you'll see throughout the presentation, the story doesn't begin nor does it end with Juan. We're going to hear firsthand from individual contactees. I interviewed about 8 people, and I think about 6 people made the cut that you're going to hear from. But without further ado, let's get to it. I'm calling this section All in the Family. You know that. I know it's a play on words, but I couldn't resist calling this section that, obviously coming from the hit '70s sitcom by the same name. The title was perfect for this section, and I thought I'd do a little chat GPT and find out where that title came from. Um, I I actually got a quote, I think from Norman Lear, that basically talked about the sitcom was named All in the Family to reflect the show's exploration of family dynamics and how different generations within the Bunker family held contrasting views on various social and political issues. That's a quote. My translation, how they dealt with or didn't deal with what? Dysfunction, right? I digress a little bit. But what I'm about to show you is an All in the Family of a different kind. Oh, I think I had the quote up here. I missed that. There we go. All right. Now, let's look at the first person that I interviewed. His name is Timothy Robinson. I'm so bummed because he was supposed to be here today. He's from back where I come from in Charlotte. He's taking care of an ailing mother. But nonetheless, Timothy is a 56-year-old man originally from Rochester, New York. He now lives in Concord, North Carolina. He's a PhD in English and British Lit and works as the Associate Dean of English at a local university in Charlotte, North Carolina. Tim grew up believing he was alone in his encounters until he had a conversation with his mother that I'm happy to say I kind of egged him on to have. And when he did, it changed everything. Not only did she confirm that she had her own early life encounters with strange beings and lights, but her calm, almost reverent interpretation stood in stark contrast to Timothy's fear, and I would dare say PTSD. So as their stories unfolded, a deeper truth came to light for Timothy that this was a shared experience, quiet as it was kept. Not only that, apparently these encounters spanned across multiple generations in his family. His discovery marked a turning point, not just in understanding his own contact, but in realizing how deeply silence and belief systems can shape what families do. I want you to just go ahead and listen to what Timothy had to say, and I pray God our audio is working. Let's see.
But when I checked in with my mom, I asked her to sort of recall the incident that you told me about when she was in the kitchen and she was sleeping, and she said that she was sort of ill at the time. She had a slight fever, and she said when she closed her eyes, she woke up and she said there were these images of different faces, different heads that she could see, and different lights behind them, green, yellow, red, flickering on and off. And she said the heads looked like, and she said this looking back at it now, she said it looked like the little Pillsbury Doughboy. That there were 3 or 4 different heads that she could make out. And I asked her, I said, what did you make of that? Did you think they were angels? Did you think, she said, no, I was 4 to 5 years old and I didn't think about anything to do with angels or anything like that. And she said, obviously, I didn't think about the Pillsbury Doughboy until now. She said, but they were little small heads. Some were skinny and had skinny arms. Some were a little bit bigger than that. And she said, when she would have these just before she would fall asleep, or if she was awake, she would see these things and then she would fall asleep. She said she wasn't scared. It didn't bother her in any way, but she always knew that she would be fine. Like it wasn't something that sort of it scared her in the way that it did me.
Okay. So this was a recent admission, as I think I told you, that Timothy's mother shared after he finally got up the courage to ask her. And as Tim mentioned, this encounter happened to her when she was about 5 years old. By the way, Timothy's mother's mention about seeing these faces and then instantly falling asleep is commonly reported by other experiencers who, during their contact, or right as the beings are showing themselves, they'll fall immediately to sleep, just like that. Now, I want you to hear a little bit more from Timothy on his own encounters in this next clip. Let's go to the next clip.
Well, I've come to the understanding, that I am a lifelong contactee. It's always been something that I have experienced. And I was always reticent to tell family members about it. But even more recently, I think with things that have been in the news, I've been more comfortable reaching out to family members and talking about these types of things, about being a contactee. I had a conversation with my mother, and I recently found out that she has some experiences that, looking back, these are actual experiences of her having contact. And she said it gave her a sense of peace. It wasn't something that scared her. Um, Unlike myself and my experiences, I had a much different reaction to the than she did. I don't know if it had something to do with her religious beliefs or not. But for myself, it was sort of terrifying in the beginning when I would have my contact experiences. I would be asleep in the bed. I would, feel like there was this presence in the room with me. I could tell it, after a few times, I could tell when this was about to happen, and I could sense it. I don't want to say psychically or mentally, you could just sort of feel it. And there would be something on the left hand side of my bed that would be watching me. And then at the end of the bed, there was something really short, um, covered. It looked like it was covered with something, like a shroud or something like that. But it was really short, short like a little kid almost. And I think I would pass out. Like, it would be so frightening to me as a child, 3, 4 years old, that I just remember passing out. I would wake up and it would be the morning time. And it happened so frequently that I ended up giving these entities a name. I called them the yayas. And I would tell my mother, I said, I was so scared last night. I was like, the yayas came to visit me. And she would say, what are the yayas? And I, drew a picture of what the thing was that was on the side of the bed that I remembered seeing an image of before I would pass out. And it was something with a bulbous head, but the eyes are what really stood out to me. The eyes were sort of large and slanted like.
Oh, I guess that's it. It's like he had more to say. Okay, anyway, I think we got the gist of it. He went on to give me incredible detail. I'm sure many of you can relate to some of what he had to say. Really something. I never tire of hearing these stories and how emotionally affected we are by them. I'm going to go ahead. I'm looking at the time. I'm going to move because we have a lot of people to get to. The next person I'm going to introduce to you is someone named Dolly Saffron. Has anyone heard that name before? Dolly Saffron? Dolly, as well, is a lifelong experiencer. I'm going to click her book. Here she is here. And this is a book she was actually the subject of, written by Preston Dennett. That's a name I bet you know. You're going to hear from him as well. The book is called Symmetry, a true UFO story. Based on what Dolly shared in our interview for this presentation, I dare say adventure is an understatement. Dolly had a realization that contact was a family affair at just 2 years old. Her memories are vivid, being taken on board, brought to a store, and expecting her mother to know what it all meant, to understand it all. But what began as a knowing evolved into years of silence and denial and emotional disconnect within her family. Now, while her family eventually came forward and admitted the truth, it would take a lifetime before her mother did the same. Dolly's story is striking. It's a striking example of how contact can ripple through families across generations through trauma, secrecy, and ultimately reconciliation, hopefully. Now, before you hear from Dolly, I want to preface by saying that very interestingly, when we were doing our Zoom interview, I noticed that we're having major tech problems, including that her video and audio were way out of sync. I know this happens on occasion. I think Timothy's was a little bit as well, but hers was off the charts, y'all. And when I asked her about her connection, you know what she said to me? She said, "Oh, it's the NSA." Okay. She says they're constantly monitoring her, and based in part on what y'all are about to hear and what she told me, some I'm not gonna include, I can't say that I'm completely surprised. Then later, we were having an offline chat, and you know what? I heard this beep, 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 strange beep sound. She said, "NSA, they're monitoring." Okay, I don't wanna digress too much. Let's listen to what Dolly had to say, and this is just gonna be, audio for the reasons I just explained, so let's go ahead and listen.